It's Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. Let's start the show with Lewis Tennant. Here we go. The guests and interviews that you're looking for with creators, innovators, and so much more. For all episodes and further info, verbalhighs.com is the place to go.
Welcome to Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs, a podcast so genuinely podcasted from a kitchen bench in Kingsland, Auckland, New Zealand, that you might be able to hear the hum of an oven behind me, the gentle hum of a 180-degree, 90-minute chicken treatment. That's the kind of week it's been. I've got to squeeze everything together. The spuds are in, whip together an intro. Welcome. A little late on the episode this week. I set out to get episodes out Tuesday each week. A couple of them gone up a little bit earlier. A couple have gone up a little bit later. This one's probably the latest to date. So apologies for that. By Tuesday this week felt like Friday, and it's Thursday now, and it feels like we're into somewhere next week. But it is my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Mike Hodgson for this week. For those who don't know, I'm part of a kind of seminal New Zealand live electronic duo called Pitch Black, who made waves first at a festival dear to many people's hearts in the late 90s called The Gathering, which happened to top a hill with a windy dirt road that I mentioned more than once in the podcast in Takika. At the top, did I say the top of the South Island? I think I already did. Anywho, apologies to Mike and to listeners who may be slightly put off by this, but he's a tad poppy, and then that's a technical term for your P's and your and I'm trying to think of your other letters. Well, definitely your P's kind of blowing out the microphone. I must continue to monitor. But otherwise, a totally enjoyable, frank, and honest podcast. One of those lovely ones where, you know, I say to all guests, we talk about their background, their career, for want of a better word, kind of how they got from A back in the day to B, C, D, E, all the way through maybe to Z today. So we talk a little bit of that, but Mike was just really keen to kind of philosophize about a few things, and I went with it and really enjoyed that. So props to him. Won't give away too much as per. Otherwise, why would you listen to the following hour and 20 minutes-ish with the man? Also expressed his deep support for what I'm doing, just in terms of an archive and the style and way that I approach talking to people, and that was really lovely. You know, every time I hear that from someone, it means a lot. Not much else to report, really. I'll probably keep the intro super brief this week. I'm continuing to get more support and presence on social media, so thanks for that. Increasing amounts of people, complete strangers to me, liking the podcast on Twitter and on Facebook and so on and so forth. So if you do feel that way inclined, oh, that's right, I was listening to one of the big American podcasts, and they talked about how there's a campaign going on with all of them in the next few weeks to raise awareness of the art form. Is it an art form? It's a bit highfalutin. The entertainment medium that is podcasting, and the whole idea is to refer a friend. I should probably remember the hashtag they made up, but I don't, and I'm not going to stop to look it up because this is going quite well so far. So I'll just give you the basic gist. If you have a friend or family member or person around you who doesn't indulge in a podcast or two, perhaps even doesn't quite know what they are, I'd be stoked if you could, what do they call it? Pay it forward. Share it. Recommend this one. That'd be lovely. You can send them to verbalhighs.com. You can tell them to like me at Verbal Highs on Twitter, at Verbal Highs Podcast on Facebook. Continue to comment. Please support me on iTunes as well. There's a link on the website to subscribe to iTunes so that you get notified when there's a new episode. I know a number of people are doing that. Also still keen to get some supporters on board in terms of perhaps a sponsor or someone wanting a shout out or whatever. So I'll just put that little wee extra desperate plea, measured call for support. the end of this intro. So let's just get straight into it, eh? Enjoy. Mike, again, if you're listening, I'm presuming you're going to listen back to your own conversation with me. Thanks so much for your words, both in the podcast and around it. Ladies and gentlemen, a true gentleman, a true creative soul, a true gentle soul, and a man who just, to me, kind of had a nice perspective on everything, I thought. Mr. Mike Hodgson.
This is Dr. Tannen's Verbal Highs.
When we spent 2 hours tuning the PA down there in the afternoon.
You know, I've often wondered when people say, like, tuning, that's just getting him with a good fine-toothed EQ.
Yeah,
and
well, basically, probably taking everything off that everyone else has done for over the last 3 years.
At the venue.
And starting from scratch.
Wow.
Basically undoing... Because what probably would happen is people come in and they go, oh, it doesn't quite sound how I want, and they work from that point.
Yeah.
So we went all the way back to the system level and got it just back to raw.
Yeah.
And then we just worked on making it sound like we wanted it to sound.
And so from the venue's point of view, you kind of did them a big skinny because you went in there and
well,
like...
it depends if they agree with the way we sound, you see.
Well...
Because we're super bass, we're much bass heavier than probably most dance music.
Yeah.
And so who knows? I mean, you know, we hired our sound engineer. He came in. We just worked our way through, and from what it sounded like when we walked into the room to what it sounded like when the people walked in the room. I think for us, it sounded the way we wanted it.
So there was enough. The in-house PA was enough without you dragging more stuff.
Yeah,
in.
it didn't drag anymore.
Oh, that's good. Props to Neck of the Woods, because there wouldn't be many in-house PAs in town that could handle the pitch black.
Oh, people said their trouser legs were flapping.
Did you ever hear that stupid... I don't know, say stupid, because it might be true. There was... I know that originally they said it was worked on in the war of frequency that would make people lose their bowels.
Oh, yeah.
But there's some urban myth that it happened at a Godflesh show or somewhere.
Okay, yeah.
Where there was...
Yeah.
I don't know how much I believe that, because, you know, I mean, that's not really great for bringing back an audience again, is it?
Not really. Well, not the ones around them, anyway.
Okay, so... well, I guess we should kick off then. Yep. If you want a water, by the way...
give me a water. Just
yeah.
I got a very, very slight... Patty was a bit sick the other day, and I think I caught the very edge of it. Just had a bit of phlegm on my chest for the last couple of days, but I've coughed most of it
today
up.
we're working with 3 ears, because one of my ears is down, and 1.75 throats.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, my guest today, I mean, you might listen to this anytime, anywhere in the world, folks, but I will point out it's an archetypical kind of... It may be sunny later on, but it's very, very, very much raining Auckland day. Anyway, is multimedia artist, musician, robot collector. I've called you a live video punk. All-round creative, event-based predominantly gentleman. Probably most known for the electronic music duo Pitch Black, along with Paddy. Mr. Mike Hodgson, good morning.
Good morning. Yes, it is a shocking day, isn't it?
Yeah.
That was an hour-long drive from Te Atatu to Kingsland.
On the motorway designed to...
Oh, you know, I did the back road, not the motorway. I just thought it would be a much nicer journey than sitting on a wide motorway stationary.
What do you think, like, how is it being back? Because for those who don't know, you're based in... Is it still Hackney?
Yeah, in London, Hackney, yeah.
So you're based in London, which present, you know, each city presents its own problems and joys and so on. How are you finding Auckland as a sort of comparison, having lived here for so many years and being back?
Well, I think it's like anywhere. If you don't have to commute, then you don't travel between those hours. And so the city is reasonably easy to get around in between 10 and 3:30 or 3. And at night, it's just the day, just the rush,
so that's
the rush
the same
hours.
London or Auckland.
It's the same everywhere in the world, isn't it? Yeah. And I've always had my studio at home, so you know my commutes. I try and keep my commute to about 45 seconds between the kitchen making a coffee and getting to the studio. Yeah. So I couldn't do it. I couldn't commute like people were doing into Auckland City. It's just a little bit.
No, I'm
too much.
that's it. Look, I'm lucky here. Like even because I just work kind of on the edge of town up there, and so rush hour. I don't know why people don't. I guess I don't know why people don't catch buses, because they are out, like you say, in the burbs. But from here, it's a bus lane all the way in rush hour.
Yeah.
Or I walk, or I bike.
Yeah.
And I've often thought about that. Like, I'm so glad I don't spend even an hour of my day every day in a car. You know, it's so much time to be spending between things.
Yeah, I mean, at least if people catch the trains, you can do a bit of work.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's definitely one argument for driverless cars, isn't it? You can actually start work as you step into your driverless vehicle, and you've already done, if it takes you an hour and a half to get to work, you've already done that much work.
Have you read about, like, some of the ethics dilemmas they're dealing with driverless cars?
Not the ethics, no. I've
Or
read some of the technical issues, like how on earth do you see far enough ahead, behind, and all round on an autobahn in Germany? There's a German engineer saying they'll never solve that problem. It's too far. It's too far away, and the speed is too high.
I don't know if I'd take one on the autobahn in the first few years of driverless. You know, in the beta phase, perhaps not the autobahn. The ethical issues they're dealing with, I haven't read too deeply, but in a nutshell, it's things like if two driverless cars are headed for a collision, which piece of software takes precedence over the other? Is there some industry-wide code?
Right, well, that's a very interesting one, isn't it?
Or stuff like if one driverless car is to hit a pedestrian or set of pedestrians, does it weigh up the age or you know, there's all this, like, I know that the stats are saying in theory they're going to be way safer, which makes sense, but just those you know, nothing's ever perfect, is it? So it's like and then the last one that really fascinated me is, like, if you pay for the, I don't know the prices, if you pay for the $100,000 model, does yours take precedence over the guy who paid for the $30,000 one?
Well, looking at
are you buying your life?
Yeah, well, looking at how society's structured, I'd probably say it would end up taking precedent, and then some hacker will come in and hack the 30,000 car and make it better software.
So, like with these, I normally kind of try and start with where all the stuff you're involved with kind of began. So
yeah, sure.
I do a wee bit of reading. Listeners will know, because I say it most weeks. I look at about 3 pages of Google, because I don't want to know too much.
Yep.
So I know you're from Christchurch.
See, that's the first myth.
Oh, so lazy journalist repeating stuff. Where are you from?
So I was born in Dunedin, actually.
Yeah, South Island.
South Island, yeah. And my dad got a job in Nelson when I was about 4, and so we relocated up there. And so I grew up in Nelson, which was a fantastic place to grow up, and a little bit out of the city on a place called Artifi Drive. The tide, the estuary in front of us with the boulder bank, native bush behind us, and then a big farm behind us. So it was almost like living in the country but being in the city.
I was going to say that's like
fabulous.
That's an interesting mix there.
Yeah, I'd say it was a dream childhood.
Yeah,
like, totally, like amazing weather. In a creative community. My parents were really involved in classical music. We were always going to concerts, and as I grew up, I started working on the door at classical events, and I got my 16mm projection license from the Polytech and was able to run the movies at the art gallery, and so all of that stuff fed into that. So the Christchurch thing came a bit later, and it's interesting that's where it sits. But
well, it seems like because this happens with everyone. It's not unique to you, but there's obviously a sort of set press release that perhaps went round X amount of time ago. People just kind of pick and choose from the. Well,
I think it's that thing of the Tinnitus project that I did with Angus McNaughton and Ashley Turner was based in Christchurch, and I guess that's the first piece of information that exists in the public sphere, for want of a better word. Yeah, and so it's not too surprising really that information's there. But yeah, then I went to Wellington. I got into design school. I always wanted to be a television technician, actually. And I don't know why.
Why would you go to design school if you wanted to be a TV technician?
Because when I finally rode away to TVNZ and got or whatever they were called back then, and got the brochure about what you needed to know and do to be a television technician, I realised that I actually had absolutely no skill to be one. So at about 15 or 16, my dreams were dashed. And I don't know why I wanted to be a television technician, because once I read the folder, it was incredibly. Makes sense to me, because but it was very. I mean, the actual job was horrendously not anything that I found exciting once I read the pamphlet.
So is it basically just sticking stuff in players and making sure each thing played one after the other?
No, it was actually keeping the television station on air, all the technical stuff, which I'm not a great technician, and I think it was just, there was something about, I didn't want to be on screen, and maybe in my childhood concept of television, I was like, well, because I worked in amateur theatre and stuff, doing set design and props and stuff, the backstage was what I enjoyed, so I just assumed that the backstage at television would be something interesting. But anyway,
just be a few boxes and some cables, and if you'd got the job, it would have been that image of the goodnight Kiwi tripping over the cables all the time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. So but that was very quickly dashed. Design school. Don't know. I didn't want to go to university. I didn't. When the university person came to talk about university, it just didn't really appeal to me.
Which is funny now, because it is a degree now, like a lot of things are these days. Yeah. So what sort of era are we talking here?
1984. 83, 84. There were no computers. So it was my first year at design school. There was no computers.
Yep.
Which you can't imagine it now.
Computers in the computer science part of the uni that were essentially whole rooms, but no.
Oh yeah. No, there were computers, punch card computers that you could, if you wanted to really get your head around the maths.
But no computer aided design.
You could make a dog print onto a piece of paper by punching holes in certain order into a punch hole, but that wasn't really where I was at. Design was great. I mean, it had a lot of life drawing, which I wasn't any good at. It had photography labs, which was awesome, and the thing I loved the most was it had pulse controlled slide projectors, where you put a pulse of tone onto a cassette at certain intervals, and it would move slide projectors forward in an order. And so the thing I enjoyed the most was making a soundtrack to a piece of time media, and I think that for me, something kicked off for me there.
That does sound pretty much like the path you went down.
Yeah.
And so was that designed for, at the time, for art's sake, or was there like a practical reason for that being part of the design degree?
Well, if you think about what we'd now call PowerPoint, in those days in the multimedia world for corporate events, which I didn't know anything about at that particular point, they were using those machines to control slide presentations for events, right? Like the big expos back then were all controlled shows off these types of techniques. So I just thoroughly enjoyed that. I really hated design school apart from that. I enjoyed being in Wellington.
Did you finish?
Which is where I went. No, I did 1 year.
See, a lot of the people I know have gone on to do the most interesting things don't finish. But they get whatever they need from somewhere in that process.
Yeah, I had a great year in Wellington. And at the end of that year, I met this band that was stuck for accommodation, and a mate rang up and said, hey, there's this band from Christchurch and they've got nowhere to stay, can they come and crash in your flat? And I'm like, yep, cool. Got talking to one of the guys about what he was doing, music and stuff, and he said, there's this kid in Christchurch called Angus. He's still at school, but he's like making these really cool things with gear, and so I was like, that sounds really interesting. So I bought a flight to Christchurch at the end of the first year of design school, and went and met Angus and started making audio experiments with him over Christmas in 1985, I think.
And so, like electronic based stuff.
Yeah, delay pedals and noises, and he had a thing called a sound on sound 2 track, which is where you record one sound in on one channel, and when you go to do the second recording, you bounce those two, what's coming in and the one you've already recorded, back to the other side, and then you just keep bouncing until.
And what sort of effect you get? Kind of a dub or a?
Oh no! It's basically he's basically treating 2 tracks like a multi-track.
Yeah.
So the first track's 1, and then the second track is 1 plus 2, and then the next track is 1, 2 plus the one coming in, which is 3.
So in other words, you use it like they did with the old samplers, like finding ways to get around the technology to expand the technology.
Yeah. And I enjoyed that so much, and Angus and I got on real well.
So how many people then, sorry to cut you off, but mid-'80s, I mean, a handful of people in New Zealand experimenting with electronic
stuff?
stuff?
I don't know. I mean, you've got Douglas Lilburn, who was doing it, John Cousins, all these different people were doing electronic. I mean, Fetus Productions. I guess, I'm not sure when Michael Lowry started getting into it with the Children's Hour, sort of, that era of New Zealand music. Yeah, there's been people mucking around with synthesizers and all that sort of stuff for a long time. Yeah. In this country and in the world, of course. And so I went back to Wellington, packed up my stuff, and cancelled my flat and moved to Christchurch didn't have no idea what I was going to do, except I knew that
That was my next question. How did you get by while you...
well, actually, I was wandering around. How do you survive back then? I guess I might have gone on the dole, maybe. I can't even remember. But I mean, it was cheap. My room, I had 2 rooms in Wellington, really near the Polytech, for $20. And I was given 36 by the government just to be at school. I didn't earn. It was just what you were given. Yeah. So and I washed pots in the cafeteria after school 3 days a week, and that gave me another $20 or something. So I had, I think I had $56 a week, and my costs were probably 32 or something. I mean, it was
what do you think about the cost of education now?
I think it's insane what's happened in the way that it's been privatised. Personally, we did a sum when my son was 17. He finished at the end of the 7th form. We did a bit of a sort of parody on how much he would need to have in the bank to have, because I'd worked all my teenage years. I had $3,000 in the bank when I left home, because I really worked.
Which is a lot of money back then for a teenager.
And I'd worked hard, and I had a lucky break with some holiday pay. So I'd done a paper run for years and didn't even know I could get sick leave and holiday pay. And when I went in and said, I'm leaving Nelson now, they said, here, and they gave me this crazy check. This is all the money that you should have been claiming while you were doing it for taking time off. But we worked out that in 7 years ago, my son needed to have 15 grand in the bank to have the same equity as I left school with. And there's no 17-year-old that's going to have 15 grand in the bank. Yeah. So I don't know. I just think it's...
And fees, I think, are about... I mean, for a sort of... I don't know about really specialised stuff like medicine or whatever, but I think general arts and associated fields now are 7 or 8 grand a year, I think, just for the fees. Yeah.
I just think education should be encouraged. I mean, it wasn't for me. I didn't particularly like it. I didn't thrive in it.
You got to discover that.
Yeah. And I think, and maybe there should be something. Yeah, the first year of universities is free. Or, I mean, I don't know. I just think this endless need for capitalistic increase in percentage of wealth is just driving this world insane.
That's the other thing is with students now. It's like not all of them by any means, but a lot of them have. To me, this is my opinion. They've heard the mantra in the last however many years it's been, and they believe it should be really job and vocation focused now and career focused. And to me, that's not what a large amount of the joys of higher learning are about.
But that's the massive irony is.
But then again, if you're spending 20 or 30 grand,
but the Polytechs did this big rush to become degree courses, whereas there's a whole pile of people who genuinely want to go and do a trade and work in what you normally call a Polytech type course, and the apprenticeship scheme and all of that stuff. It was all fantastic, and for people who don't want to know what the zen of the mechanic of the car, they just want to make someone's car go. They get a lot of joy out of them going home, maybe into their own garage and fixing their own stuff. That they were all told actually that's not that there's no value in that, and they dismantled the apprenticeship schemes. They turned all the Polytechs into universities. They ratcheted up all the costs for everything, and then now they wonder why there's no one around to fix your car or do all this stuff. And I just think that it all went a bit mad. And higher learning should be for people who want to do higher learning. And there should be as much value placed on the people who want to use their hands, who want to be practical, who want to do craft, without it being this elitist thing that if you're not intelligent or you're not able to manipulate the share market, that you don't have any value to society.
There's the word that's where I think that and measuring so-called intelligence one way is kind of broken because when I go to my mechanic, who like when you get a good one, you stick with him for years.
That's right.
He has an intelligence with my car and his hands and his knowledge that if that was IQ measured, I'd have an IQ of 7.5. You know, and people who knock, for example, people who knock David Beckham when he's interviewed or whatever because of the way he comes across. Well, my intelligence level for projecting a small, round, inflated object into a box at the end of a field with other people who are the best in the world in doing it is about 4. So,
and I think
there's spatial intelligence, there's different kinds of intelligence.
And I think we should rate all that. So, and that's the reason why I absolutely...
So agreed on all fronts.
I hated the guy, when I was in the 7th form in Nelson, this dude from Canterbury University came up and it was the most horrible, belittling speech. Yeah. And it was so negative to anyone who wasn't getting a 5-star bursary or whatever it was called. And I was like, well, I just, when you don't see society like that, when you hear people talk like that, you just go, actually, I don't want to be I don't have anything to do with you and where you sit on the planet. So
that's right, hierarchy.
And also, I love hiring. I think we need intellectuals. We need people who just lie back and sit in a chair and just go and come and just think abstractly.
That's exactly what I'm doing these days.
And I think it's fantastic. But I don't think that it should be. Obviously it shouldn't be judged. I had a great thing the other day. Went to explore my window. I had to have my window down for a while. It was pouring with rain.
You had to have your window down.
Well, window down.
Oh, down. Sorry.
Just to get my butt, all that sort of stuff. Anyways, some water got into the window mechanism and then it wouldn't go up. So I had to put a towel on the window for the whole explore and just hope the car didn't get flooded. Then I was off to Pairoa to make an album with a friend, and as I drove into Pairoa with the window stuck down, there was a Toyota dealership, and I've got this beat-up old Toyota that I bought while I was in New Zealand for 3 months. Yeah. And I just drove in, super cheery people, there's a mechanic there, I'm like, yeah, we'll have a look at it. And they fixed it. It's a little electronic thing, but they fixed it by hand, didn't get in a part, didn't just throw it out, didn't just get in another one from Auckland. Yeah. He bought it to bits and with his own knowledge just actually repaired it. Yeah. And he even surprised himself that he was able to do it. And we were having this great conversation when I went to pick the car up. It cost $98 to get it fixed. It would be like $300 or $400 or more if they'd had to get a part in. There would have been a part thrown on the rubbish, something else generated. And this guy he was like, I really enjoyed doing that. I just got into this mindset. And he said it's just so rare to be able to actually do that now, and so I really like that. It was lovely. It gave me a real warm feeling. Yeah, I get that I've been serviced by someone who could use their intelligence to do something that I can't do.
And I hear the other thing. You're kind of the subtext of that as well is that if you'd kind of got it done in the big smoke, probably 9 times out of 10 it would have been phone call to the main Toyota parts place. Yeah. Chuck that away, bung a new one in.
Yeah, because it's the easiest.
Keep turning over.
Yeah. So it was nice out in a more rural environment, and the people they were so like, oh, where have you been? I've been at Explore. Oh, how was it? We all wanted to go, but we had to work on Saturday, and it's like, so it was that lovely community thing that they all knew it was on. Yeah, and it's just cool, and it's good. You got to get out of the big smoke as often as possible and drive around and see the rest of New Zealand.
Yeah, that's right. And I actually want to one day, as a local, do a kind of backpacker tour of New Zealand. You know. So back to Christchurch. You moved down to hang out with Angus.
Yeah. Oh, you were asking about how I survived. So I was wandering around a place called the Art Centre, and I saw this word court theatre, and I hadn't. I'd done amateur theatre stuff in Nelson as I grew up and stuff, and so I wandered in. I just went to the reception and just said, "Oh, hi, this is the theatre." "Oh, yeah. Is there any jobs going?" Or no, I didn't actually. I probably didn't even know if it was a job. I just said, "Can I help out?" And they were like, "Oh, we're a professional theatre." I'm like, "Oh, do you mean you pay people?" And they were like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "Well, I grew up in the theatre in Nelson. And I did set design and props and stuff like that. Helped pull up the curtain and did backstage stuff." And they were
generally got to know the whole craft.
Yeah, and they were like, "Oh, our props person's just resigned."
Oh, nice.
And I was like, "Oh, okay." And they said, "Oh, come in for an interview." So I went in, brought in a bit of work that I'd done, and I think I can't remember the process. I think they just hired me on the spot, and but it turned out that the leaving props person was Alex Bathgate from Tall Dwarfs.
Really?
And who I didn't sort of
Left
their
because the
music a little
band was
bit.
taken off?
I
or-
don't know. I think he just had enough. It's pretty hard hours in theatre. With production weeks, you get into 80 hours a week, and don't know why he left, but it was perfect timing for me.
Yeah.
So we had a week-long crossover where he showed me where the workshops were and bits and pieces, then just left me to it, and I was just in the deep end. And so that was earning enough money to live in Christchurch and start doing the experimental shows with Angus. And
what was the moniker with Angus? What was the outfit called?
Tinnitus.
Tinnitus.
Yeah, so we were like
Noisy.
we put out noisy sound space, sort of there was occasional songs, sort of. We involved lots of different people, lots of non-musicians just coming and making noises down vacuum cleaner hoses and going into loads of delay pedals and reverbs, and we're just experimenting. And Angus ended up living in a old ex-spiritualistic church warehouse, so we started throwing all-night parties, and we hadn't really heard of the rave scene.
I was going to say, you kind of pre-raved
96. 86, 87. But raves were happening.
Yeah.
We just didn't really know that. So we'd have music playing. We worked for free for a sound company in exchange for getting PAs in the weekend. There was the first video projectors had come into Christchurch, and it cost 400 New Zealand dollars for a day hire. And so we'd do gold coin on the door, just to be able to afford to have the video projector, and then we'd do the rest of the gig for free. And we did one every few months, put out loads of cassettes, and it was a real fun times.
So for people listening who would have heard of Pitch Black but may not know exactly what the both of you guys are doing, particularly when on stage, you're, as well as I guess, for want of a better word, engineering or adding effects and so on live, you're also in command of the visual side of the set. So I was going to ask, did all this kind of evolve from starting to do that with Tinnitus?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, my thing's always been that the ears and the eyes are together, and that the visual staging of a show is equal importance to the sound. Yeah. And I've always worked in that, so I haven't worked strictly in rock and roll, for want of a better word, where a couple of park hands and a thrashing good song is enough.
Yeah,
the energy. I've always come at it from more of the art attitude and the staging side, and what an event looks like and how it works over time.
Do you feel a little let down these days when you kind of see a guy with a laptop and that's about it?
I think I think visually the person standing with their laptop in front of them performing, I don't really like that look.
Because even an animated kind of traditional DJ is probably a little more compelling than that.
Yeah, Paddy and I work hard. The laptops are pretty hidden. My video laptop's sort of bent backwards and has got the lowest profile as possible. We don't want that.
So you get just the silhouette of you guys and the visuals behind you, and you see what you're doing with your arms and so on.
Yeah. We actively try and not look at the laptops as the show's going on. I occasionally need to reach something on the video show if something goes mad, which, there's a lot of MIDI and noise and data flowing through our system, and in a hot, sweaty club things can get bumped or, things happen.
How's that changed over because I want to very soon get to the kind of pivotal or seminal or whatever the word is, the 96, 97 gathering that was the first one I went to as well. I think it was the first one after it stopped being on train. But just the kind of nerd in me wants to know, how has the leap in technology must have been huge even between 97 and now, because you're just talking about basically the amount of stuff going through the tubes.
Well, it's huge from 86 to now. The amount. Essentially, you could. It's gone from analog to digital. Yeah, and the process. Some of the mixing desk processes are the same. I've got a digital controller that we've designed to be like an analog desk. It's just when I turn a knob, it doesn't have an analog path. It affects Ableton Live like like a mixing desk.
You guys built your own desk?
We didn't build the desk. We got these things called Dre banks, which are just knobs, and
Yeah.
I've recreated a 16-channel audio desk with EQs, sends, and volume. And so, because that's why I grew up mixing on a desk, I can't imagine not producing my music.
Hodgson sliders are nice, right?
Like a desk.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, essentially, the cool thing when I met Paddy, just to jump ahead, is I'd figured out how to do non-linear video in real time, and he'd figured out how to do non-linear audio in real time.
Now, what do you mean by non-linear for the listeners?
Everything's in pieces, and you can put it together in any order you want.
Yes.
So
live...
there's no timeline if you want, or there's no song structure. Everything's in pieces.
Yeah.
And those pieces can be short, those pieces can be long, but they don't have to go in the same order at any time.
So I might be getting what Ableton does a little wrong here, but you kind of predated what things like Ableton are capable of doing now.
So Paddy had a technique. He'd been playing on live children's telly, doing all sorts of stuff in real time. He had been working for pub bands, playing, and he just had this real belief that you had to. If you were live, you had to be live, and you had to be able to respond to a situation. You couldn't go into the rehearsal room, just get it all up, and then go out and play it perfectly.
So it's dynamic.
Yeah,
it's dynamic.
It's real-time dynamic. Yeah. And I developed a thing with a guy called Ross George, which we called MIDIO, which enabled me to spit a MIDI note to a video file, and when it got a certain MIDI note, it would play a certain number of frames out of that video thing. And so it was on early Amigas, and then we were moving into PC based, and then it slowly moved over into Mac. So when I met Paddy, he's like, oh my God, I've been watching all your video. He'd be coming to shows, and I'd been VJing, and apparently he'd come up and hung out and looked at what I was doing and stuff, but I hadn't met him.
Because you were in the zone.
And and he's just like, we've got to join because we both believe that the shows should be put together when they're put together. Yeah. And and we just started working, and I brought my system, and he brought his, and he blew my mind. He completely blew my mind with what he could do, and I think I did the same for him. And we just started, and we were just fired. It was very exciting. Yeah,
because it sounds like it. Because I didn't learn till in the last couple of days that prior to that inaugural performance, you'd only been hanging out 6 months or something.
Yeah, or even less. We only had 2 songs. But one of them was half a projector mix song, which was the group I had between.
How long was the set?
30 minutes.
Oh, that's all right. 2 15-minute songs at a rave's okay.
And the funny thing is, we didn't even have the mixing desk was pushed off to the side, and we just Paddy played the songs, built the songs in his real time, and I touched samples and keys, which triggered video. And it must have been crazily clunky. I don't even know if there's a recording.
That's the thing about back then that I kind of dig, though, is I was some festival, Rhythm and Elves. A few years ago I played and stage managed there, and I ended up staying at Damon Nomad's house.
Oh, yeah.
And he was showing me footage he's got of just... because I think he got New Zealand On Air funding to shoot a video at one of those gatherings.
Because that's the first time I ever had seen him. Was he played with the 2 Runga sisters, I think,
right,
in the drum and bass tent
as Locust.
And that was.
But anyway, so seeing this footage, I was kind of filled with like, wow, that's so fucking amazing to see footage of that long ago, and it actually does look like quite long ago. But also, I was filled with kind of, I'm really glad we didn't all have cameras and phones and whatever in our pocket, because it's nice to just have that the way I remember it. Yeah. And seeing it was kind of the way I remembered it. So, I'll take what I take away from it instead of, all that banal footage of... But that initial performance, if you're going to hit anyone up, see if he's got anything in the
I heard he's put a whole lot up online recently, so I need to
Alison also started. Alison Green, one of the founders, also has started that wicked. Or shouldn't say started. It's actually been around quite a few years now. That archive site. Do you know about that? There's lots of stuff up there.
Yeah, she's been in touch with us about getting stuff. So
so huge technological
Yeah, I
change.
suppose the most. I think the computer. Well, it's interesting. I mean, CDR basically was the first thing that damaged it, because in 99, 98, when the CDRs. So in the
Damage. How did we get
well,
to damage?
What happened was in that 96, 97, and maybe the 98 gatherings, all the electronic artists pulled their studios to pieces and took them to site and reassembled them on stage.
Up one windy hill
and played.
It's such an amazing
and played live.
phenomena, yeah.
And played live. And then CDRs came in, and I think the next gathering, or maybe the one after, the people have gone, why am I pulling my studios to pieces, getting it covered in dust and having to carry it around the country and put it back together again, when I can burn my stuff to a CD and just
maybe DJ it, tweak a few knobs.
DJ it, and it just, there was a moment. In
that goes against the ethos of everything you just described about Pitch Black.
So there was a moment where the whole sort of sense that live electronic music was going to explode, it just suddenly stopped. And
in New Zealand, or you think globally?
Oh, it probably happened globally. I don't know. I wasn't overseas.
Yeah.
And I think with the ease of things like being able to use Ableton in real time rather than its arrange page, we're back to where we were, like in a very easy way now.
Yeah.
I just have a personal dislike of seeing the rectangle of the laptop screen in my view between the performer and what I'm viewing.
Hello, Apple logo.
Well, that's the other thing, is the people that don't cover that up, which is just nuts. Anyway, that's their problem, whatever.
Yeah.
I just close my eyes and listen to the music.
I figured that might annoy you.
Yeah.
It annoys me.
Yeah, I mean, Tom the other night did an absolutely beautiful set, but he just stood behind his computer with his Apple logo, and it's just like, so nice music, but bad presentation, I thought.
So what else look, I think the gathering, for a lot of us, I don't know what the numbers are of how many they got overall through all those years.
Right.
If you counted repeats as
so it was more people that go to festivals now.
More people that go to festivals now?
Yeah, I mean, there was the 2000 one was about 15,000.
Wow.
The one
is
before,
that the Floody one?
Yeah, and I think the one before was maybe 12 or 8. Like Luminate just had 4,000.
How would Explore get?
Explore's capped at 8.
Wow.
Yeah.
And for people who weren't there, it was. I think health and safety laws have gone kind of nuts since then. I'm going to go down that rabbit hole for better or for worse, but it was 10 to 12,000 of us going up one windy, treacherous road to the top of a hill, and that one particular year there was torrential rain of biblical proportions. I think it cleared up for about an hour
and cold
on one day,
and insanely cold.
And sure, the food tent ended up getting set up by the end as a makeshift kind of emergency blanket situation, but everyone got off there.
Yep.
Okay, there's something about...
well, we could go down the whole road of this thing called common sense, which I think's being bred out of us by the system.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The system has bred common sense out of us. That's quite deep.
I think it's starting to breed it out. I think people are risk averse in a way that's damaging to our sense of this, the way that we exist on this planet.
So we're becoming like a 24/7 jackass TV show.
In a maybe not quite as jackass way, but no, I think the regulations, which some I think are important. It stops people being killed by scaffolding out of the roof. But I think there's other stuff that's just a bit nuts, and I think that at some point there's got to be a meeting, and where you need to accept that people are moderately self-aware and intelligent about what they're
I
building.
got the wrong end of the stick there with my jackass quip. I thought you were meaning that younger people had become like sillier and more dangerous. No. You're going along what I was saying. That health and safety has bred the adventure, the risk taking, the number 8 wire.
I'd say more number 8 wire, not risk taking. I just think
calculated risks, because I watch those tech teams work at the gathering.
It looks loose, but you know what you're doing.
Yeah,
and you might not hang something in the roof in a certain way, but it's not going to fall down.
No.
And it might look a bit sort of ropey, but the person that's put it up is aware of weights and wind and stuff because they've been brought up to think. And I think that, the best thing that we can give our children is the ability to be sensible.
It's so interesting.
Rather than tick a form. And I think, there's what are they called? They're not the there's a word for things on a site. I was doing a job in the Tower of London for that poppy thing, and we had to lift a video projector up onto a top of part of the Tower of London. And the guy, the dude who runs it, who's the overall sort of manager of the Tower of London, he just said I had to write down how I was going to do it and think about any things that might go wrong and stuff. So, and I thought it was something legal I had to do. So I was like, I took it seriously, and I was like, right, and I went through all the things that might happen as we lifted this video projector up and what we're going to do and all the stuff, and I wrote it all down. And I said, before we started, I handed it to him, and he just screwed it up, threw it in the bin. He went, I just wanted you to think about it. And I'm like, I love it, because that meant that I'd gone through this process in my head.
Yeah.
And
that was your dress rehearsal.
And he was confident that I'd actually... So he was confident to now let me be without overseeing me, because he saw I'd gone through this process. And I think that's what we need. We need more of people being educated about how to be in these event worlds, not the overarching hardcore regulation that can sometimes stifle event invention and creativity. And
it's so interesting you say that, because one of the things I took away from all of the gatherings, because I was performing at them, but also I knew a bunch of these guys already. So what I'm getting at here is I had that kind of semi backstage punter thing going on. Is they were the people that struck me as, I know the heroes is a bit cheesy, but just the technical teams on each zone, like people like Simon Kong and Jeff from Wellington, just the way they worked.
Oh, and the people that built the compound and put in the water and built the structure, and
a lot of people were at beginnings or quite young, starting off, like you said about whether to go to design school or not, dipping their fingers here and there. And I think a lot of people actually forged their path into what they went off and ended up doing from what part of that festival they were involved in.
But they also came from a school. No, when I was at school in Nelson, at 15, you got sent into the mountains with 4 of you and a rough map drawn on a piece of A4, which had an X where there was a hut, and told not to come back till Friday.
Is it serious?
Yeah. I mean,
did they give you a compass?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, maybe I can't remember. But you just basically got sent up into the Matuki Valley out of Murchison, and on a Monday, and there's going to be a roast on Friday at lunch. So
camp out.
See you later.
Wow.
So obviously there's paths because kids have been doing it for years, but I've got no idea if that would happen these days, but I don't think it would to the same degree. And we were just, it was expected that we were intelligent enough, or had enough common sense that we'd come back. And the one I did, it was in winter. We were above the snow line. Like the hut when we found it was completely covered in snow, and it's like, but that's how we grew up. We didn't see it. No one saw it out of the ordinary. Yeah. Whereas I think I'd hope obviously in the rural schools and stuff, it's probably still happening. I think with this shift to
maybe for an afternoon, not 5 days, Mike.
I mean, shifting to the urban environment is I don't know, it's killing a lot of stuff off. And I'm not. I mean, I know that people have died.
And there you are in Hackney.
And here I am in Hackney. Rural. I live a rural London life, I call it.
Is it rural?
It is for me. I live next to a park. I don't go into the city that often unless I'm going to a gig. There's not that many people around during the day. Yeah, it's pretty quiet where I am, comparatively. The odd siren, and I head into town if I need to.
Where I've said to everyone who's on the show that if we segue, and we've made some brilliant ones, but I think we do need to get back to your music career. And your audio-visual career. Yeah. But I want to just hang on this gathering thing for a little bit longer, because I know you were good mates with Grant Smithies, and he was one of the original organisers. Just talk a little bit about this genesis of an idea, and then, like we've already talked about, in the operational side of it when it actually happened. But before that, how did it actually come about to get that site and do that?
Well, I think the original N-Train idea happened from people that I believe were not from the Nelson area.
Yeah.
And I think the gathering happened sort of specifically because the people who were in the region felt like people from outside had come in and put a party and given them a little bit of money and then taken a whole lot of money away from the environment and had gone overseas and travelled, and they felt a little bit probably like they'd put in all the work themselves. Oh, they'd put in all the hard work to pull it off, but the gain was just a tiny bit of money.
Like a travelling circus had come through and
strip mined the thing, which is not exactly what happened. I think the impression was that it did, and I think the people in Nelson went, actually, we want to do this ourselves, and so I think that's where the gathering came from, and I think the N-Train people possibly, anyway, that's a whole other story. I think between that the ethics between N-Train and gathering, but as a regional thing, the people in Nelson took control of their area and the fact they could put this party on, because N-Train had been up on that mountain before. Yeah. So it had come down. I think there was a reason they weren't able to use the mountain on the one that they did in 88 Valley up in the Cobb, and I think they were planning to go back up the mountain for the next one, but the gathering managed to get their momentum going before the N-Train people came back, and so the N-Train people suddenly discovered that their thing had been sort of overrun by the gathering train.
Appropriated by the locals.
Yeah.
And so did you say people of Nelson, quote unquote, Murray Kingy, Grant Smithies?
Yeah, and I think there was an investor as well. There was the local record shop guy.
Yep, the guy from Everyman.
Yeah, the guy from Everyman.
And then not a local, but brought in Ellison.
Yeah, I don't know if Ellison was there for the first one, because after the first one, I think Grant and Josie were like, actually, no, this isn't what we want to do with our lives, and so
too hard.
They moved out. Yeah, and went, we've done it. What? Yeah, nah. Yeah, and I think that's when Ellison came in, possibly. I'm not sure. Yeah, but I mean, it's like every generation should have its spirit animal. That is the thing that in your early 20s just completely blows your mind.
Well, a friend said to me it was our Woodstock, which I thought was a little...
Well, it was. I mean, it was our... It was. It's. I mean, Cog Transmissions was our Flying Nun. Yeah. But in a different way. Yeah, I mean, it's not comparable. Yeah. And, I really hope that the 20-year-olds now have got what it... And I don't know what it is. And it's something that just completely blows their mind and changes their lives and helps them on their path. Yeah. Not just a giant
flashing light
booze fest thing where they where they're not able to be part of the experience. Yeah. But I think with the gathering, the people there felt part of it. Absolutely. As opposed to the fence between them as punters and them and the event. Yes. And it's two separate things.
No, you're so right. Yeah, there wasn't sort of rock and roll barriers. And I mean, look, on a most practical level, let's face it, there... this is about the fourth time I've mentioned it, but relates to this next point. There was a big, windy, single, dusty road to nowhere, and then there were no bars up the top. So, obviously, it was known that most, if not all of us, snuck a little booze in. But the fact that that it wasn't advertised as a retail alcohol festival really set the precedent for who was interested in coming in. Oh, totally. And also
wasn't. There was that massive shock,
and probably took a lot of the riskier parameters away for the organisers.
I think there's definitely an argument for non-alcohol festivals, and they happen in that trance world more than they happen anywhere else. I've just been up at Luminate. Completely blew my mind. There's not a single rubbish bin on site. It was no one-use vessels at all. It was all stainless steel knives and forks, crockery, pottery cups.
Wow.
Stainless steel.
Is that what if you're camping and you want to cook and stuff, that's what you have to bring?
Yeah. Well, if you're camping, you bring what you bring, and then you take it all away.
Take it all away, yeah.
But in the main food area, if you didn't, there was you couldn't just go and buy a meal if you didn't have a vessel to put it on.
That's such a great idea.
You could rent one for $5, and you got $4 back when you brought it back. Right. They've got so much water up there because the water is piped from the spring.
Where are they?
back up at Cannon Downs.
Oh, Cannon
Same
Downs.
place.
Yep.
You had to wash. You had to actually wash your plate before you put it back into the system.
Yeah.
So the person who makes your coffee and puts it in the pottery doesn't want the cup to come back dirty.
Dirty with
So
milk all over it.
your responsibility
Yeah.
as a citizen of Luminate is to return your crockery washed.
Yeah.
And there were sinks for Africa.
The little things, eh?
It was amazing. And like
How many
7
people?
days, 4,500, I think.
Really? And it just happened recently?
End of January.
End of January.
It's every 2 years, but it was like one of the most.
I thought Illuminate was
inspiring-
like a bad inner city paint each other party. Is that not the same?
No. Oh,
different
no,
one.
don't know. No, and
Yeah.
no, I mean, there was a little bit too much trance music for me, but I just went to bed when that came on, over the hill. But they've got a live stage. They've got a proper chill zone where if any artist started playing too much up music, the front of house engineer would just pull the faders down and then shake their head, and then if the person would have to go back to the chill set, then the faders would come back up. It was beautiful. It was like properly well-run, intelligent festival.
Is the 21-year-old trance aficionado of today kind of similar to the similar look, similar fire poise?
Yeah, no, fire poise, lots of earthy colours.
Yeah.
Certainly wasn't dress up like Splore, that's for
lots
sure.
of white people with dreadlocks.
Yeah, lots of dreadlocks. There was it was sort of multiracial in that sense. It was Asian,
That's cool.
Brazilian,
I've often thought about that.
South American, Polynesian.
I've often thought about that. That's with Auckland and the diverse population here, how that's not transferring to a lot of parties and gigs. So that's good to hear that,
I think it
that,
should,
the heads from whatever culture they're from are starting to all converge together.
Yeah.
Because I'd imagine that would look a lot different to the late 90s.
Yeah, it was a week after Rainbow Serpent in Australia, so I think they specifically put it on so that there's a community of people who do travel.
Yeah.
And so Luminate's one of the ones on the global calendar.
Wow.
And you do get people coming through specifically. So, you're either next to someone who's completely impoverished and is volunteering on the festival just so they can get fed, next to a trust kid who just spends their entire...
go there, but I was going to say, how do you travel around the world going to trance parties?
But you don't know from one minute to another. And it's the same going to these crazy festivals in England.
I do trance parties in summer, and then I snowboard in the French Alps
that's right.
in winter.
Yeah. I mean, we're at these crazy parties in England, and everyone's just totally out of it and just having a great time. But you could be standing next to Lord Salisbury, and you wouldn't have a clue. Yeah. Because...
Oh, jolly good synth line there.
Yeah, exactly. And it's totally like that. And there's the it's a strange one, those festivals, which is great because
it's good because it brings people together,
and it's breaking down all of that classist society stuff that happens. But I'd love to see a situation where there could be a festival that could be the music that we all like, but properly multicultural in a way. But sometimes it's a price barrier, sometimes it's just even an awareness barrier.
Well, I think Splore's on the way, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I really enjoyed Splore this year. I hadn't been for 5 years, so I saw a real shift in the audience.
Talk about that.
Shift. So 5 years ago, I thought there was a younger crowd that got a bit munted on the Friday night, and it all got a bit ugly, and sculptures got smashed, and it was like, I was like, oh my God, this is turning.
Starting to get a little bit bro.
Yeah, a little bit, and some of those kids maybe were starting to discover those festivals and thinking they were, they could be like that. But then this time coming back, it's like the audience felt like it had shifted to sort of 26 to 38-year-olds plus all the other ages. But it felt more mature. It felt like the people had got the aesthetic of Splore and were a little bit more aware of what you needed to be at a festival where diversity is celebrated. And didn't feel like you could wear whatever you wanted, and you weren't. There wasn't going to be some dick come and say that because you were wearing pink pants you were something. And I felt it's nice to see with all the massive changes that have happened with Splore, with personnel and going annual and all that stuff, that some of that deep-rooted Splore attitude.
I know what you're saying. It hasn't turned into a commercial, a purely commercial operation.
Yeah. I mean, there's a commercial side to it, of course.
It has to be.
They're trying to bring in acts that cost a lot of money, and they've got to make a certain amount.
Well, they've got to support themselves in their job, which is putting on Splore.
That's right. Yeah, and it's I guess now going annual, that is.
And I'd like them to do it well.
Their job. Yeah. So I was really impressed that it hadn't lost some of that stuff that's in the DNA of what Splore is.
Yeah.
And
I feel like, just to clarify, I can't speak for you, but I feel like there's been a little bit of a narrative here where it might come across like with being a little bit pessimistic about the youth. But I just thought I'd point out that I think in every generation there's probably a similar mix of people, and there's good people doing good stuff in all
always.
ages. They probably just, like you alluded to before when you said, I hope they have something, that fulfills that same kind of thing.
Yeah.
They probably do. We don't know about it.
Yeah. Oh, and in theory we should.
It might be on Bandcamp.
But
I don't know.
In theory, we shouldn't know about it.
Yeah, that's right.
And every generation has the right to their thing that they think's amazing without being told it's not.
Yeah.
And but I'm pessimistic. I'm pessimistic about society and the system.
Yeah.
And what it's doing and how it's shifting people. And
I'm quietly and terrified, actually. Especially in the last few years. But that's another podcast for another day.
Yeah, I just think you feel like you're making progress, and then I was driving in and hearing these reports of this Wellington College private Facebook group thing where these guys just think it's okay to talk about people in that way between themselves, and the response for the school is it's just bravado, and it's like, oh, of course these kids are like that because the headmaster of the school's got the same attitude.
Yeah,
it's like, God, how long is it actually going to take for us to actually grow up as a society and shift to this other place? Why are we still talking about gender equity and pay, all of that stuff? I don't even understand why it's still a conversation.
Because old, rich, white people run things.
Yeah, okay, yep, that could be it.
Yeah. And
and shareholders must have a dividend.
I think, I can't put a number on it, I was going to say 9 times out of 10, because a lot, if not all of the time, I think to really scramble to the top, you've got to be quite a ruthless, selfish person with whatever you want to, when I say use the word body count, whatever that is, with a body count behind you.
I can see. It's depressing.
Yeah,
it's depressing.
Hey guys.
Anyway, back to music.
Hey, we've only got just over. We've only got just under 25 minutes. So music. So the gathering.
We're talking about the technology change. I think once computers came along, it's democratized the ability to create music.
Did you even take a laptop for that first show in '97?
No, I would have had the not a laptop. I definitely had my PC for triggering the visuals. So it was my laptop was
took the box up.
Was it? Yeah, but it was. I'd got increasingly smaller and smaller PCs. There was one I could carry under my arm.
Wow.
I bought a flat screen at one point that just changed my life because I didn't have to take a cathode ray, and I think it cost like $3,000.
What was it then? Plasma? What was it?
It was a little black and white. It was a little monitor, really tiny, that I had to get a card that I had to put in the PC to plug it into, and it was really tiny, super low res, but it meant that it was tiny and flat, and I no longer had to carry my computer monitor, which was big and heavy and ridiculous. Yeah,
amazing.
And that changed everything. That made the whole taking a computer out so easy, and and then I just kept buying flat screens as the technology came in and got better and better. Yeah. And they way before laptops.
Because you do for sort of your main income, you've done a lot of corporate video work.
Yeah, well,
it must have been really satisfying in both worlds. Yeah. Just because I know you really passionately you love events, and so just to be able to sort of take what you were originally doing on this much technology and then be able to just add 60 huge LCD screens and yada yada yada. That must be quite an amazing thing to have watched change in your career.
I think the thing I absolutely love the most is finding a creative way to work with the industry, and the other thing is in it. Coming back to the fact I did a paper run for 5 years. I didn't go surfing in Nelson. I did a paper run. I've just always worked. And when you're working and employed, you tend to work for 8 hours. You've still got another 8 hours, and then you can still get 8 hours sleep. Yeah. So I've always treated the work as the income for being able to do what I want to do with the next 8 hours. And then maybe I'll do 12 of those and sleep for 6
Yeah.
or 4 instead of 8, and that slowly progressed. It meant I was always in a professional. I was always doing professional stuff along with my total experimental art, which meant that as things like Mike Mizrahi came and asked me in the early 2000s, maybe the late 90s, to work on the Warriors with him, because the New Zealand Rugby League couldn't afford the third ref system, and they were hunting round for a way of being able to make the word try and no try come up instantly. And it's hard to imagine these days that was difficult.
Really?
But Mike had heard that I had this MIDI triggered video system that could immediately make things happen, and he rang me up and said, "Oh, can you do this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, with my eyes closed." He's like,
"Yeah, it's one word.
Fantastic.
One word's got to come up."
Yeah, and then because he's the creative man that he is, we started coming up with all sorts of crazy things. So we were like making little noise. If I saw a big tackle coming up, I could anticipate and hit the key, and this massive sub would go across the thing, and a big word like would come in and crash to the ground on the screens and stuff.
So you did what most sports franchises in the States stuff had done years earlier. You kind of brought this bombastic show
to the Warriors.
To the game.
And then we started getting told off because it was getting a bit nuts. We were
The show was overtaking the game.
Yeah, I think it happened. There was one thing. There was an Australian side rushing for a try or something, and I did something, and it put them off, and they dropped the ball and something, and then all hell broke loose because they complained that we were actually interfering with the game for the Warriors. And when you think about it, probably deep down I was just a little. Yeah. So So we took the fact that we needed to be able to do try or no try, and just took it to the nth degree. So I think that whilst I've worked in the corporate world,
so were
as
you
much as possible.
Sorry, you were on site
I was
every Warriors game for how many years?
Oh, maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah,
I mean that essentially that shifted the money I was earning from that was enough to be self-supporting, and it gave me the gap between the games to pick my creativity and my work up and,
what a
and
luxury.
really fly.
Yeah.
And I like corporate work when it's super creative, like doing the rugby ball, the inflatable rugby ball, doing the Frankfurt Book Fair, going up and doing events for Tourism New Zealand and in America and Australia.
I know what you mean. So instead of we need some screens to say this.
Yeah.
It's more like, here's our idea. We've got a problem here.
Yeah.
We want you to take it to that level through solving that problem and designing something.
Yeah. And let's take a step back, and you've put 2 rectangles on either side of the screen. Why have you done that?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, because that's what you do. Like, well, okay, let's get rid of those.
What do you mean 2 rectangles? Explain.
Screens.
Oh,
rectangular screens.
Yeah.
And it's like, why don't you just build a set and paint it white, and we'll project on it and map it to the shape of the thing. And they're like, oh, can you do that? I'm like, yeah. What does it cost? Oh, it's the same.
Yeah.
Because it's like, get rid of those screens, get some plywood, build a shape.
Yeah.
Still using a projector.
Yeah.
And I think that's the model we always worked to, was how to make AV more extraordinary, more interesting, and not so much that it was a cost barrier to people.
Yeah.
Because we were able to be, Bruce from the Darkroom and I we got really good at flying around and making high-end video on our little laptops while we were on planes.
Yeah.
And the world hadn't moved to that point.
What do you mean making while on planes?
Just
using stuff.
Because we'd always travelled and always worked.
Yeah.
We didn't need to be in a production studio with big machines and.
I see. You were doing what pretty much everyone's doing now, and doing it in transit on the fly on your laptop,
and
or
doing
whatever.
it in hotel rooms, and and we were using like little Mac Minis, and little weird video mixing desks and MIDI notes to go and do giant shows in New York that would have, if they'd priced it up with any other company, would have been 100 times as much, and we were still getting paid really well.
Yeah,
we were just guerrilla and nimble about it, and had just got used to it. We'd developed a process that we could output these extraordinarily beautiful videos.
Yeah. Is this Dub Module?
This is the Darkroom. And Dub and me.
Yeah.
So Bruce and I had companies that we worked together and did a lot of work for Mike Mizrahi and Tourism New Zealand, and worked for Louis Vuitton and stuff. So it's always coming from a creative place, and it's always coming from how much emotion and beauty can you put through a video screen. Even doing a job for telecom, it's always, how can we not just make this boring or normal or looks like it's been made by a committee of people who shouldn't really have any right to have the decision about how something looks, because that's why you're hiring us.
Yeah.
So that we've always pushed that stuff.
Because like a common theme that runs through with a lot of my guests on here, and it's not because I have some screaming interest in commerce or business or whatever. It's actually because a lot of the time I've had guests in who have made a career of their creativity or their passion. So a question I often ask is, how did the business keep ticking along? It sounds like the last people going, you need these guys, you need these guys. You never really had to launch your own campaign to get work. It just kept coming on in.
But the other thing with events, there's always one that's beginning development. There's always one that's partway through development. There's always one that's going into production week.
But if you're not being asked to work on any of them, that's a problem. So that's what I mean.
No, we had for a while. We were the go-to people for a particular type of aesthetic. And we wouldn't do, the All Black Sports Award. Thing or the stuff that
I totally get it.
Our reputation was for a creative way of approaching video and sound, and I've always loved doing the sound design for all the video shows that I can. So that's always been my. I'll run the jobs and oversee who's coming in to do it technically. Bruce was always in charge of the look and feel and how the video worked, and then I was able to just do all the creative sound stuff, which is what I really enjoyed. So I got my enjoyment out of the corporate work by actually being able to do the sound design, and so I could just function on the producer role and the function of actually pulling it off. And I don't know the work. I don't know how work comes in. I mean, it worked, and we had quite a few years where there was enough work.
Well, you're unique, doing it really well, making people talk about their event or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, that's you want. I mean, and hopefully what we did inspired loads of people, and you just hope that everything you do makes everyone else think slightly differently, and so the whole industry grows because of what you do.
And so when you guys aren't there next time with the person you talk to, they walk into some much smaller thing going on with the company and go, those 2 square screens. I think we can do better than that this time.
Yeah, that's right. And then they'll hire. There'll be some kid in their design department who goes, I've been doing stuff with video, and they go, because was it $400 for a mapping software, and
that's the other thing
a
that's
couple
changed so much,
of grand for a second-hand laptop, and so we've reached a point where it's actually the creative idea or the content that becomes, and it's same with making music. Anyone can make music, but is it good music? And then, of course, you get into the thing of, do you like that style or that style, that style? But I think it's fantastic because there used to be gatekeepers to everything. Like the broadcast camera used to cost $100,000. And now they're broadcasting stuff shot on little iPhones and stuff, and they've stopped putting amateur footage over it and stuff, which they used to do. And it's just brought the whole thing down to a level where it's the actual idea and the way you do it that becomes important, not the barrier to having a piece of machinery.
One of the classes I teach at the moment, I do 2 different sessions of it a week, 2 different sets of students, and that's getting them to make. So it's learning to tell stories with just one sense, which is unusual for a lot of them these days. So in other words, it's an audio course, and so it's a mixture of teaching them about theatre of the mind and storytelling with just audio, and how to script something when you can only hear stuff, blah, blah, blah. But then the other side of it is I teach them really basic Pro Tools. So once they've gone and got all their bits and pieces together, they can stick it all together. But that gatekeeper thing really speaks to me because, even in the late 90s, to have access to any kind of editing software like that, you had to know someone who worked somewhere that had the tens of $1,000 suite. And I'm in a room now with 30 students each class who, as it's a compulsory paper in the first year of their degree, are sitting on 30 Macs with 30 copies of Pro Tools on it. And I don't say it to them because I want to sound like an old. I was like, you guys don't know how. You don't know how lucky you are. And
if you were going to take that to the nth degree, that'll be on, which is a $200 app now
Yeah.
in the App Store.
Yeah,
So
I think the
it's-
reason we do Pro Tools though is because if they go into more
it's
the
professional
media
standard.
side of
it's
it,
the
it's
professional standard.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm just saying that. See, it's still there,
totally.
and it's still sitting in education, which is elusive to people
Yeah,
who
no,
can't
that's
afford
true.
it.
Yeah,
And
although I think speaking of Angus, as we were many a moon ago, I think some of those courses they run at Mains
Yes.
are designed price wise to be
Yeah.
really accessible to
Yeah.
most of Auckland.
Yeah.
I looked at I was just looking at all their courses a while ago, and I was like, oh, Learn to DJ course, which kind of made me think, God, I don't even know how I'd teach someone to DJ. But anyway, it's got great teachers.
Yeah,
It's Chris Cox and so on. But
Yeah.
but that's only it's like $60 for four quite long sessions.
Yeah,
And I thought
excellent.
that's,
Well, that's awesome
really
to hear.
really great
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
you
And
know,
the other thing is, even though the internships can sometimes the interns can be slightly taken advantage of. When I wanted to learn how to do a little bit of video, I had my young kid. He just started going to kindergarten, so I had 3 or 4 hours every morning free.
yeah.
I found a graphics company that were overworked and said, "Hey, I'll come and work for free 4 hours a day." And they needed someone to clear cut photos for Noel Lemming brochures. And so I went in 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
They gave me a laptop. Not a laptop. They gave me a desktop. They said, "Okay, this is Photoshop," and God knows what version
So
it was.
you're doing pre-press basically.
Yeah, and they were like, "Okay, this is how you cut it. This is how you do this. How you do that." And then the guy was also making video, so I was just doing this basic donkey work for free to learn, and then he started teaching me Premiere,
Yeah.
and I was like, and that's what I really wanted to do was actually work out how to go from my little triggered video-y sort of thing and learn to edit, because I'd just been joining stuff and I don't even know how I was making the video work. And so I think I did 6 months there for free, and then that gave me a skill. It didn't cost me anything. It gave a bit of time. It helped their company.
And I'd hope that you sound like someone who can pick a vibe with people, and you probably wouldn't have done that if you could pick straight away that he was just going to exploit the shit out of you, because you see he ended up teaching you. I hear what you're saying. So instead of paying 10 grand to enroll in a course or whatever, you learnt the software package whilst doing the work.
So I gave a little bit of my time,
yeah,
and in exchange I got knowledge. And I think if anyone,
as long as both sides get something out of it, I'm an advocate. But I'm not an advocate these days of for example, what I see companies like MediaWorks doing and stuff, where people want to get into broadcasting and they have internships for experience, which is basically like, hey, we need 20 staff for free who've just spent 20 grand on a degree. I think that's fundamentally a broken kind of model, you know?
Yeah, and that model's rife in London.
Yeah. I read a book. The reason, it's because obviously I teach students going out to that field, but it's also because I read a book about the use of interns in the States, and it's crazy. It's like places like Disney World get students in from Harvard or wherever who work on the fry station at one of their burger carts, just to have for free, intern, just to have that they interned for Disney.
Right. Okay.
So. Yeah, there's so many layers to that.
Yeah.
I won't go too deep into it. But think about this as well. That means that all the people who live in Florida who traditionally survived on that low income work because that's where they're at, have these rich college kids coming in, and it's so crazy on so many levels. It's
I would almost say that maybe it helps that rich college kid get a bit more of a grounding in the way. Well, I was going to say real life, but then they're at Disneyland, so that's not real life. So
it's real life when you get hot oil on you. Anyway.
Yeah, I just made me think. There's at the end of the Wed Together set at Explore, they just said, just be nice to people.
Yeah,
like we just go out every single day and just be warm to every person you come across, no matter how they treat you or anything. And if we all go and do that, then the society can change.
I've worked on that. I have, and I think God, I seem to be talking a lot about my role as a teacher today. It's whatever this is bringing up. But that's really humbled me in a lot of ways, like that kind of altruistic buzz of be nice, help people, share what you know, try and take a bit of what they know.
I think it's
kind of collaborate rather than try and take and amass and sit on your pile of things that you've amassed.
And the guy on the radio today about this Wellington College thing was saying, we teach intellectual intelligence, we don't teach emotional intelligence.
Right.
And I think kids, you need to be teaching people the emotional side of their lives as much as they grow, as much as their brain and their career and all that sort of stuff.
But where are the jobs in that, Mike? Where are the jobs?
Well, you'll get a job if you're emotionally intelligent, because you'll sit in an interview and the person will go,
connect,
we want you in our company because of your spirit. I mean, a lot of job interviews aren't about what you can do. They're about how you're going to fit into the culture.
Yeah.
So,
you know I was kidding, right?
Couldn't tell.
So speaking of that, your son has followed in your footsteps in a way. He's in the events industry, or he's doing lighting stuff.
He's doing video. Actually, he's moved from lighting to video.
Yeah,
and it's quite exciting. And we talk about the thing of being talking about the kids, but I've spent a lot of this trip back to New Zealand, hanging out with him and all of his mid-20 mates who are all VJing and doing their stuff. You. And it's awesome.
Yeah.
And
where are they doing it? At little parties?
And doing stuff and putting little things on themselves and doing stuff. And there was a beautiful photo of all of them from Luminate, and I just ran their page. You guys are giving millennials a good name. And it's like, it's been awesome being around these. They're focused and they're interesting, and they're not all tied up in all the crap. Stuff.
And so did he ever come up on site as a little toddler for the early gatherings?
We used to take, not to the gatherings, but I used to take him out.
Feel old.
I used to take him out to the big day out, and the lighting guys would build a stand for him to stand on, and so at 13, 11, 12, not sure what one he went to.
He got a better seat than the rest of us.
And then each year we played, the stand got lower and lower. And then one day there was no stand, and he was on the desk. I think he did lights during the day in one of the zones at one point. And then there was one year that we weren't playing. He had been employed. He had the AAA pass. I got a guest ticket, I think, to go and see Tool or something. And I'm standing on the other side of the fence as a punter, and he's going backwards and forwards with his AAA. And I'm like, dude, you've had 7 years of AAAs. Come on.
Did he get you anything?
No, I was stuck on the other side of the fence.
Oh, right. So how old is he now? 23, 24?
Turning 25 this year.
25.
And it's awesome. I guess you don't... Yeah, hopefully we just taught him common sense.
How long you been away?
4 years this time. Yeah.
So is it going to be hard sort of going back with that, with having hung out so long?
He's coming over to Europe. He's just picked up a European video tour with an Australian group. And so he's coming over for a few months.
Like a band?
Band. He's doing visuals. I mean, there's the little crew of people that he's building around him, and the whole that sort of creative video side of what's happening in Auckland and I hope Wellington and Christchurch and other small places is they're building a great the next great video side of the way that they're approaching video creatively, and some of the work they're making is just gorgeous. I mean, the Delaney who's doing Shapeshifters video at the moment, it's just stunning. How he's made their show look absolutely incredible.
Yeah, he does their show, but he's also doing their latest video for their single. Is that what you mean?
No, I don't know if he's just live.
Oh,
video.
Sorry, live video.
Live video. Yeah. And I think, with LED walls coming on stream and all this stuff, there's the need for content. I mean, you need.
So that's the latest thing is the LED.
Oh, yeah, and and they're everywhere. And you as a promoter, you've got to put stuff on them, and I think that will show what a promoter's like is on what content's on the screens. Yeah. And if it's just loads of logos, you can see where their focus is.
Do you often? Obviously, you don't want to name shows or whatever, but do you often, in your capacity as an audience member, feel let down when you go to events that people have, maybe got a babysitting for, spent a lot of money on going to?
Yeah.
Do you feel like there hasn't been as much investment?
Yeah, I think you can see the ones that have just been flung together to make a bit of money. But I think generally anyone in events is actually trying to put on a good show. They might just come from a brutally commercial perspective, and they see having the logo on the screen as serving a function.
Yeah,
because it's enabling them to put the show on.
Yeah,
it's just from me. I see everything as creative, and I don't want to see a logo because I know that sponsor put on the gig because it's on every other thing I see at the festival, and the screen should be sacrosanct to creativity.
I think it's almost. I've thought about this. Like, I don't know whether just because of how record sales work and how we're so connected now, and how basically everything's changed. I don't know that we're going to have as many super groups in 10 or 20 years. So what I'm getting at is all your kind of Metallicas and your Rolling Stoneses and your whatever else big shows, that kind of big stadium rock experience may disappear in the future to an extent. But it's funny with the technology thing. I was thinking now some of them are really, really getting on in terms of their age, how long they've been doing it. Yep. I feel like the technology is almost holding a lot of those bands up at the moment because they're able now to up the spectacle and take away from the 475-year-old guys
and they've got the budget
on stage.
I mean, I think the thing that's going to happen real soon is Glastonbury in VR. I'll have my headset at home with my super high res speakers. I'll jack it into the broadcast and I can pick this stage or that stage or that stage in real time, and I'm one of 10 million people who aren't at the event inside this world.
Well, if you're
having the concert, I'll pay a subscription for that, or I'll pay for that concert, and I can't wait for that to happen.
If you're back here, then can I invite you to Glastonbury here?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, we'll watch it over a coffee over your kitchen bench. For anyone who doesn't realise, this is all being recorded in Lewis's kitchen.
It is live from a kitchen bench in Kingston. That's a great place to end, man. Thanks for coming in. When are you back to Acne?
In a week.
Oh well. Safe travels if I don't see you before then.
Yes.
So I put the jug on again.
I think so.
There you go.
Deserves a coffee, and then next time we can talk about music
with our VR headsets on.
Well, actually, I won't be here. I'll be in London.
Thanks.